Welcome to Be Now for Tuesday, May the 9th. My name is Don McLeod, and I'm joined as usual by Fazell Khan.
I'm the button pusher.
There you go. How's it
I'm gonna
going,
push.
Fazell?
Good, Don. The weather's well, it's a little overcast today, but
I'll
that
take
was
it.
a lot of rain we had the last few days.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's like, you know what? Like you mentioned to me before, it's a good, raining is a good time to pull dandelions. They come out quicker, right?
They also grow quicker if you don't pull them, and they
Yeah,
get out.
exactly. Yeah, I've given up.
Okay, Don. So today we have a topic that seems to just never get addressed, and we forget about it because I don't know, we're not elephants, so we
No,
forget things.
some people forget about it, but it seems to raise its head every time an election comes across, whether it be a municipal election or a provincial election, right?
Yeah. So we decided to do today's topic, which is the rising cost of insurance.
Again,
Before my daughter got into a car accident yesterday.
right.
Yeah, and so I'm living through uh, insurance. I wouldn't say hell because I you got to go through the process, right? So my daughter got in an accident yesterday, and I should not have put it on social media, but I have an electric car, and I talk about my electric car on my Twitter account. So I posted a photograph, and I said my daughter was driving, but I didn't say if my daughter was okay or not. It was just assumed if she was not okay. First of all, I wouldn't be posting on social media, but everybody's replying, "Is she okay?" And then I got a text from my sister, "Hey, what's happening with my daughter?" And then I realized, so I had to fix that tweet. But the cat was out.
Cat out of the bag.
Yeah, and somehow my mother found out,
Oh,
and I didn't call her. And I got a text today saying, "How come you don't talk to me anymore?"
oh,
Uh,
geez, you're in big trouble now,
I'm in
buddy.
big trouble. So I had to tell my daughter, I posted it on social media. Can you call your grandmother? Because I don't want to talk to your grandmother right now because I'm busy doing stuff.
So who's at fault in this accident?
It was the other driver, but at the end of the day, I think the insurance is going to decide. And I think my daughter's got a good case because she was going straight through an intersection and somebody was turning left. So right away, it's going to be hard for the person turning. Now, what the insurance might say is you're both at fault, which is not what I want to have happen. So we'll see. We're going through the process.
All right, so this is one of the reasons why we decided to do it. The other reason is I saw in the National Post just recently an article that was written by, I think it was called Driving. It was written by Lorraine Sommerfeld. She was a writer and talking about how insurance rates, Brampton, again, is the number one car insurance in Ontario. Again, we have the highest insurance rate again. Last year,
Yay! We're number one.
yeah, okay. It's something you don't want to be number one at. So last year, apparently, Vaughan was the highest insurance rate, but they dropped to number 5 this year, and they actually had a 1% decrease or reduction in their insurance rates across Vaughan. So for some reason, Brampton is number one. And take a guess at what the insurance rates on average in Brampton are increasing by, Faz.
Well, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I already saw the number, Don. So
All right, okay. 37% increase on the top of it. So if you're in Brampton, you're a driver, you're registered in Brampton, you could possibly see up to a 37% increase, but it's stretched out over the entire Brampton. So it depends on your driving record and so on and so forth. It's a pretty big increase.
well, especially when you think where Vaughan is relative to Brampton. So
Yeah,
what is it? Was it high? The 427 is that the border?
yeah, basically around
If you
that
live
area.
if you live east of the 427, you might actually see a decrease. If you live west, like steps west, because you're in a different postal code, you're probably going to see an increase, right?
So yeah, and then let's take a look at Toronto is number 2, listed at 19% increase. Mississauga is number 3, and they have a 17% increase. So you take a look at Brampton, they're looking at 20% on top of the number 2 and 3.
What do you think's causing that, Don?
That's pretty high. Well, apparently the number one reason, according to this person, is theft and fraud. That's the number one reason why insurance rates are going up. Now, we know that,
Well, but that doesn't account for Mississauga because I
well, of
think
course,
they have more auto thefts than Brampton has.
and they're
So you
part of
explain
Peel
that.
region, which, Toronto is separate, but in Peel region, you have Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. So, that 20% increase from Mississauga to Brampton just because they're in Mississauga, but we're in the same region, right?
Yeah. So I don't know, Don. Like, to me, our provincial politicians, our MPPs, need to step up. There's
Well, we
5
hear
million.
this every year, right? I mean, when the Liberals were running, I heard it from certain Liberals that were, before they got defeated by the Conservatives. I heard them saying, yes, in the next, if you put us back into power, we're going to end postal code discrimination for insurance rates. They said that. They lost. The next election came in. The Conservatives were saying the same thing. They said, you know what? Vote us in. We're going to actually, address this situation. Nothing's been done, right?
And
I
then
know.
we had two NDP MPPs last provincial term,
Yeah.
and they were always harping on insurance rates. Now we don't. It's all the Conservative MPs, and we don't hear insurance must be okay in Brampton. I guess we don't hear anything.
Well, apparently, according to this person, theft and fraud are the number one reason. Which is, I know that the provincial government just gave $50 million for auto theft to Peel Regional Police. I think it was Peel Region, but it was also Toronto, but to fight auto theft. And I know that Patrick Brown just put forward a pilot program for those auto theft pouches, which, according to this author, Lorraine, she said basically she talked to the city of Brampton. The pouches have arrived. They're going to be sending out the pilot project pouches very soon. But it's like, Mississauga, what are they doing? And they're getting part of the $50 million. They're not doing.
Well, and that 50 million is like the whole region. It's not
right. Exactly. It's the region, but still, we're paying 20% higher than Mississauga, and we're in that same region.
Well, how much time are we going to give this $50 million to take effect? And these pouch, like, we should see results in 3 months, Don?
I have no idea. I don't know what the timeline is. Right?
So this time next year, our rates should be going down as well, not up. Because if it goes up 37% of auto theft, and auto theft flattens out or goes down, the insurance should follow and go down as well, right?
You would think that if there's a not a quid pro quo, but if there's a decrease in that, you should see a decrease, because the justification for an increase based on theft and fraud as the number one reason, that should drop, right?
You would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's.
But
see.
I'm not convinced the $50 million is anywhere near sufficient to address auto theft. When, like, how many cars have to be stolen to add up to 50 million? It's not that many, right? So it might just shift the problem around, or it might change the tactics that these thieves use, because it's a supply and demand issue right now, right? It's hard to get vehicles. Used car vehicles are still very expensive. New cars, especially certain kind of cars, are popular in wherever they're shipping them to overseas. This is a bigger problem, and we let our politicians, or especially the higher level governments, off way too easy on these kinds of issues, because that is why they exist, is to keep us safe, to protect our property. And I honestly can't say that I feel more secure in the last little while.
Well, here's a little thing about theft. And if theft and fraud are the number one reasons, okay, let's just take theft out of the mix. Okay, so fraud is the number one reason. So what do the insurance companies do to stop fraud? Isn't it up to them to be able to basically, they're the ones that pay out the exorbitant sums. They're the ones that actually do the claims. If there's a fraud,
and I'd like to know
who else is responsible for that. Like, how am I paying for somebody else's fraud, or the insurance company's lack of investigation to actually catch someone who's doing major fraud?
Yeah, it's simple. Ban the shipping of vehicles. Well, so
no, you can't do that.
I watched the. I don't know if you watched the Auto Theft Summit. I think it was 4 to 6 hours. I watched the whole thing, Ivan. And there are so many containers leaving the country, and there's no way to know what's in the containers.
You can't. It's like, if you take a look at the international containers, number one.
You can, but it's expensive, right?
Well, you can't. Every container searched is impossible. That's like
not
saying,
searched. If you know there's a car in it, okay,
well, if you know it's a car, but the only reason that you do that is because you have to have a tip, and it's there. You know how many those cargo container ships? They've got thousands of containers, and you know how many container ships there are in the world? Those things are going back and forth from China, Indonesia, crossing.
There was actually a number they gave at the Auto Theft Summit, but one of the other issues is the ports in Hamilton want to have ocean-bearing vessels leave from there as well.
Right.
So it'll get even easier for people to get these stolen vehicles on a container ship.
Right, because right now you have the Port of Vancouver, you have the Port of Montreal. Those are the two main shipping hubs out of Canada, right? It's not like we have, ports on those are the two main shipping ports they leave. The amount of traffic that comes through there on a regular basis, on a daily basis, is insane.
Yeah, and Ivan, I don't know if you're saying stop all shipping containers,
Well,
but they don't know when you ship a container, it's a piece of paper, and you think thieves are going to put the right contents of that on their piece of paper?
Well, we're not only shipping cars, Ivan. Most of the stuff that we have comes into this country from different, like China. Everything you go in to see at Canadian Tire, Walmart, blah, 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 blah. I don't care what store you look at.
That's coming in. That's coming
in from China. But at the same time, the exports going out, they're double dropping a lot of these times. So if you're importing steel into Canada, you're drop shipping it, and then you're shipping it south of the border. There's all sorts of things that come and go.
I would. I watched the summit, Ivan, and I was trying to organize it, but it's a lot of work. One of the things they talked about was scanning container ships, but again, that's an expensive machine, and you have to get every container ship through it. It logistically, we can't even get people on airplanes, let alone scanning big container ships. And then when they do cherry pick one to scan, they got to take it out. The big crane has to lift it. Somebody has to come over, open it. Somebody has to go in and look at it, and then you got to reverse the whole process and get it back on the right ship in the right spot.
Well, not only that, if you go to one of the container load areas, like there's one in Malton for the freight, you take a look at those containers. They're stacked like 10, 15 high, and they're like there's miles of areas where they're just stacked in.
To me, once it gets into that container, it's effectively gone, right? It could be sitting on some lot somewhere in the GTA.
Absolutely.
But it's basically gone at that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. The amount of stuff that comes in. People have no idea how many containers go in on a regular basis.
But there are things that they're trying. There's some data analysis. Like they can kind of use big data. There's also some things they're doing with other countries, because I always wondered, like a VIN should be a unique number. If it shows up in another country, shouldn't that other country be responsible?
Well, you can change VIN numbers too, right? And you can actually fake.
But you should have paperwork to show the origin of that vehicle. And
you can make it up. I mean, thieves are very smart. That's the international thing. What can we do at the base level here in Brampton? And there's a lot of things, because I see, you drive every day, I drive every day. I see people doing U-turns, illegal U-turns in the middle of the road, busy intersections. I see people speeding on a regular basis. I see people without headlights driving at night. I see headlights with one headlight, which is against the law. And then when you see people, the people is catching people going like 50 kilometers over, they arrest them, and it's like, oh, he was driving with a suspended license and no insurance. And then his car is impounded for 30 days. I'm like, 30 days? Like, at the base level, there should be something where it's like, number one, harder to get a license. We've talked about this before. There's people driving that should not be driving. Harder to get a license forget about Ontario, in this country. It should be a matter of, you get something like you're drinking and driving. How many times you heard someone, they're drinking and driving and they've been caught 7 times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not unusual. It's like,
and I put the onus there too on the insurance companies. Why would you insure that person? But then that raises another issue with the high cost of insurance. How many people are out there driving without insurance, and when they do get in an accident, they take off? And now I always worried about that, right? If somebody gets hit, a pedestrian gets hit, and that driver takes off, that is cowardly, that's shameful, because that person that just got hit, first of all, they could survive it. But if they do, who's going to pay for all the costs of them not being able to work? Because
that's it, and they just pass it on. One of the big things that your insurance companies always talk about, I remember this one guy, he was calling in, I think it was one of those news talk stations, and he was saying, I live in a condo 26 floors up, and I got my insurance bill, and it was increased by something like 25%. I called the insurance company up and said, well, why is it a 25% increase? And they're saying, well, because there was a lot of flooding in Ontario this year, and this was several years back, what we do is we distribute the amount of, pain across the board. So it's not one. And the guy said, okay, that's great. So why don't you do that for insurance rates for the auto industry as well? Oh, well, we can't do that. Blah, blah. So the insurance industry is talking out of both sides of their mouth on this issue. And for the longest time, again, you live in Brampton, you're going to get screwed on insurance rates. And that's the only way I can look at it, because there's so many different mitigating factors. Why is Toronto number 2 and they're only in 19?
Yeah, it's a significant difference.
There's more cars. It's a bigger city.
And at least our politicians should be explaining it to us. Why is it? Why is it this way, right? So that maybe we can take individual action.
Yeah, I mean, if you're yeah, immediate punishment is basically what we're looking for here, Ivan, right?
So, and I know there's some technology. I know City of Brampton bylaw is using the license plate readers, and that's apparently really assisting in finding vehicles that I'm not sure exactly how they're using it, because I think for bylaw enforcement. But I don't know if Peel Police is using license plate readers, but when license plates zoom by a road and it's flagged for not being, for the driver not to be driving, they should be able to start tracking these things, right?
Well, like if someone's driving and is with a suspended license and stuff like that, I'm sorry, but like that's you're driving something that's like 2,000 to 3,000 pounds minimum. If you're driving one of those other trucks, it's more. If you're driving those things, whether you're drunk, impaired, or whatever, I'm sorry, but if that happened in Europe, especially in countries like Germany, you wouldn't have a license again. You would not be able to drive, right?
Yeah.
And then I've heard where people go in and they rent a car and they have their license suspended and no insurance. How can you rent a car with the license suspended and no insurance?
Yeah, but also, if you are not a good driver, how are you able to afford insurance rates? I don't understand this.
Yeah,
right? I'd start riding my bike more, or getting somebody to drop me off, or taking public transit. Driving is not a right.
Well, that's the whole thing, that people take a look at it and they say, yeah, it's my right. No, it is not. And it's not your right to be able to kill other people with it and drink and drive and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that, have to be addressed. But if theft goes down, our insurance rates better go down, because, they've been saying this for years and years. Well, it's the number one reason, blah, 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 blah. Same thing with fraud, as I said before. That's up to the insurance companies to regulate.
This is a topic now we can't let go. The only reason we're talking about it is because there was an article, right?
And your daughter got into an accident too.
Yeah, and I'm glad I have insurance. I'll let everybody know how that resolves itself. But the tow truck driver said to me, the car looked like it was fixable, but the tow truck driver said, well, the airbag went off and it's an electric car. That's going to be a red flag for these auto insurance companies. And if they have to pay for a replacement car, I could see why insurance is high. But, nobody's injured, thankfully. But I'm sure that's where a big part of the cost is as well. Is if you
a lot of people don't realize that they're saying it's a write-off now for cars. They'll take a look at it and say it's a write-off because, number one, the car parts are hard to come by now. They're having a hard time actually getting new cars on the lots. Some people have to wait up to 6 months to a year to get a car. So the replacement parts, there's still a problem on that. So they take a look at it and say, well, it's a write-off. We'll give you what the car's, black book value is, depending on what the depreciational value is and so on and so forth. So the other thing is that this article Lorraine was talking about here in the article, they were saying basically if you're trying to save money by being smart, buy a smaller gas efficient car or an electric car, something that basically uses less gas and it's, a little bit more eco-friendly and everything else, you're going to pay a higher insurance rate. If you're buying a Ford 150 or one of those big Ram things, those behemoth trucks, you're probably going to pay lower insurance rates because the insurance companies look at it and say, if you're driving that big behemoth, if you get into an accident, there's less chance of you getting injured than if someone's buying a small car that if they get in, there's going to be damage and there could be someone killed and we have to pay out more. So, you take a look at it and everyone's saying, politicians say, oh, well, drive a fuel efficient car, get a smaller car. Well, you do that and your insurance rates screw you either way.
I
Yeah,
honestly, I don't know what to say anymore, Don. Uh, I don't know. And
yeah,
I got three kids. Luckily, they were all. My wife had to double check that everybody was listed as a secondary driver on both cars, and yeah, it was because you're scared, right?
yeah, yeah. Of course.
Um, on even it's like I nobody in my family's been in an accident recently, so you forget how you have to deal with it. It just so happened there were two Ontario OPP officers there from somewhere out of town that helped at the intersection, but there was no police there, and they were only there for safety reasons. The tow trucks pulled us over afterwards. They were actually the most helpful, the drivers, and my driver was saying, "Yeah, you got to fight with these insurance companies. If they say it's a write-off, don't take their whatever number they give you. You got to fight for it."
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway, it's a situation that basically we're number one again in the insurance rates across Ontario, which is not good. Um, driver is out on $500 bail. Yeah,
yeah,
and
hit and run. Like if you hit somebody, okay, accidents happen, but when you run, to me, that is a serious crime. And I agree, Ivan. That should not be
that's
taken lightly.
Dottie.
Oh, is that Dottie? Sorry,
Yeah.
Ivan. Yeah, I agree, Dottie. That if you hit and run, man, you should there should be a penalty for that
Well, there should be
because
jail time. I'm sorry, but you know what? Jail time and your license. Forget about getting your license back for years. Forget about the 30-day suspension if you're 50 kilometers over. I'm sorry, but you know what? You lost your license. In Germany, we talked about this many times before. You have to drive for 1 year. If you get a speeding ticket, you don't get a license. You have to go through the whole process again. Right? It's not. It's only in North America does it seems, you can get a license. Just yeah, we'll give it to you, no problem. Pay the money, take a stupid test that
yeah.
is not worth anything. You don't have winter driving test. You don't have this and that. Yeah, we'll give you the license, and you're free to drive around. And God knows, you and I and many people have seen bad drivers, not only in Brampton but across the GTA. But it's ridiculous. So
And you know what else, Don? You know what
yeah,
else?
what
I'm
else?
tired of. I'm tired of getting tickets in the mail from those fancy automated speed enforcement devices. I've gotten two in the mail. I wasn't driving, but my wife's. You can't tell
Well,
who's
you're
driving.
gonna have a heart to heart with your wife, buddy. That's sitting in your case, right? Not mine, right? Let's segue into something. We'll keep an eye on this because like I said, there's a pilot project that Patrick is for those auto theft pouches. $50 million for auto theft to police. We'll see what that goes through. We're starting the summertime right now, so you're going to hear all sorts of road racing.
And this is
Uh,
something the police will have to be accountable for because if auto thefts keep going up, like where's this money going? Right? You're not doing something right.
well, the money, got to go somewhere. But to me, the root cause should be at the ground level, right at the base. That's where you stop it, not internationally in containers and everything else. You stop it on the ground
But it's
level.
a supply and demand, Don. If
Yeah.
the numbers they were talking about as auto theft is tens of thousands of dollars in profit for organized crime. Where else are they going to get that so quickly by stealing somebody's car?
Yeah, well, but you got to at the root level, right at the ground base level, and you got to stop it there. Not when the thing's in a container going somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's insane. Anyway, let's talk about it a little bit. We'll keep on this topic. If you got anything else to say, we'll talk about it later. But let's go on to the Toronto mayoral race.
You
I
love
see
this
that.
race, Don, because you keep talking to me about it.
Eh?
You love this Toronto mayoral race.
I do actually,
You,
because you know what? It's going to make a big difference. For
oh,
Toronto.
Don. Sometimes I got
What?
to double check your work. Look at what you wrote there. I'm gonna
What?
have to fix it. You're gonna have to look at the
Mayoral.
at the recording of this. I had to fix.
There you go.
That was a bad spelling mistake, Don. It's fixed now.
Okay.
I won't say what it was.
Okay. Spelling is not my forte, by the way.
Okay.
But anyway, Olivia Chow apparently in the forum research polls, there's the Main Street poll. Apparently, she's leading by a good amount from all the 76 candidates running in the Toronto mayoral race.
This is why, Don, I dislike the process the politicians go through to get elected because it's not about policy. It's not about ideas. It's about name recognition.
Right. Absolutely, 100%. And this is why you take a look at it and you see someone. Olivia Child's credentials to me are not, basically stellar. There's some other candidates in there that would do a better job, but like she's leading, so it's going to be interesting. Here's the big thing. I remember Doug Ford saying, if you elect a what did he call it?
Communist,
a left-leaning pinko as the mayor of Toronto, that's going to be a major disaster. Well, I don't think you can get any left-leaning than Olivia Chow. So, it's going to be an interesting concept if Olivia Chow does become the next mayor of Toronto and she's got to deal with Doug Ford. Doug Ford's head might explode, basically.
But give credit to Doug Ford. He figures out a way to forget what he says and move on and take pictures, and everybody's singing Kumbaya.
It'll be an interesting concept. I think I think it's in the next couple of weeks, is it not? It's June sometime, June the 4th or something like that. So it's coming to a head pretty quick.
So, and it's all about name recognition, unfortunately.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the overall dynamics are for the city of Toronto.
We should have how any sports you watch now, there's gambling, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be somewhere where you can see the odds for this.
Where the odds? Well, we're going to talk about gambling in one of the future shows because you know what? I think that's gone way out of hand. I think that is going to be a major problem going down the line for not only a lot of people but a lot of young kids. The way that they're selling that gambling now is unbelievable.
And when did that become legal? Like, what happened to make
that? Just came legal very soon under the Doug Ford government. That was like before it was.
Oh, it's a provincial thing.
Yeah, it's a provincial thing. So you got Bet99 and MGM, and they're just pumping.
I know all the names because when I'm watching basketball or baseball.
Yeah, every time they're on there, they're talking about it 100%. They're Bet99, do this. It's your game, and it's, to me, that is incredible. That is just looking for problems down the line.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in another show. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the mayoral race, and let's see what happens with the insurance rates. But again, Brampton is high, and that's it. You got anything else to say before we leave?
We just got to live with it, I guess, right, Don?
Well, I mean, you got different ways to do that. I know some people have two addresses, and they put an address for cottage country, and then that's their main.
Well, but you know what? You're also taking a risk because these insurance companies can find things out, right? So,
if you get into problems, they can void the policy, and you're screwed that way, right?
I actually heard about somebody who had an F-150 and it was stolen, and then the insurance company denied the claim because the person was using it for work. Are we disturbing you, Don?
No, somebody calling from 420 area code. It's probably somebody trying to sell me insurance.
Yeah, so they can deny claims, and then you got to fight them. So who wants to do that?
Absolutely, 100%.
You got to pay what you got to pay. If you don't like it, move.
Well, to me, there should be more. If you're driving without a license, you should be really nailed. If you're driving without any kind of insurance, you should be nailed.
Yeah, 100%. That's why am I paying for somebody else's?
If you're found guilty of fraud, remember the police officer that was involved in a tow truck scam? That was fraud. Hey,
he's probably out of jail, right? The penalties are not stiff enough.
Yeah, and that should be major, right? Because you're dealing with, they talk about all sorts of different things. But if you're stealing from a bank, if you're caught stealing from a grocery store, you're probably going to spend more time in jail than someone who has committed fraud or something like that, right?
I can't say, Don.
Okay. Well, let's test this theory out. You go steal something from a...
steal a car,
yeah.
I'll steal some milk.
Okay, and we'll see who gets the heavier sentence.
We'll
check back later next week to find out the results.
All right.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday. Thanks, Faz.
Bye-bye.